Picture this, a quiet, tree-lined street in one of America's wealthiest neighborhoods. A black woman in her 40s, Denise Carter, is walking home from a long hospital shift, groceries in hand. Suddenly thud. A bag of trash explodes against her shoulder. She freezes, shocked. Eyes lift upward, and there, on the balcony of a mansion, stands the mother of a white billionaire, glaring down at her. This wasn't a prank. It wasn't an accident. It was deliberate. The words sting louder. In the garbage itself, people like you don't belong here. And the question that shook everyone was simple. When a white billionaire's mother humiliates a black nurse, will her powerful son choose silence or justice? Which city are you watching from? Denise Carter, 42, was no stranger to exhaustion. As a nurse, she'd worked endless nights through the pandemic, cared for strangers, and raised 2 kids alone. That evening, still in her scrubs, she decided to take a shortcut home through Whitmore Avenue, a gated street lined with mansions owned by America's elite. Inside one of those mansions lived Margaret Whitmore, the proud and sharp-tongued mother of Jason Whitmore, a white billionaire who built one of the largest tech companies in the country. Margaret was infamous among staff for her arrogance, but no one expected her to cross this line. As Denise walked by, Margaret leaned from her balcony, tossed a heavy bag of trash onto her, and spat cruel words. "You don't belong here." The scene froze, neighbors peeked through curtains. Some pulled out phones. For Denise, humiliation wasn't just personal, it echoed centuries of disrespect aimed at black women in America. Denise's body trembled, her scrubs stained with food waste. Every part of her wanted to leave quietly to avoid escalation. But she thought of her children, of her patients, of every person who had been told they didn't belong. She refused to let silence win. She steadied herself, looked up at Margaret, and asked, "Why would you do this?" Margaret's reply was chilling, "Because I can." That moment changed everything. Denise pulled out her phone and went live. Within minutes, thousands were watching. By morning, millions had seen the headline, "White Billionaire's Mother Throws Trash on Black Nurse." Outrage spread like wildfire. On Twitter, hashtags trended. Hashtag Respect Denise and hashtag Whitmore Accountability. On TikTok, clips replayed Margaret's sneer over and over. Commenters demanded answers. Will Jason Whitmore defend his mom or stand with justice? The media swarmed. News anchors replayed the video on prime time. Investors panicked. Jason's billion-dollar empire, known for innovation and sleek branding, was now tied to the ugliest stain racism in broad daylight. Jason stayed silent for 24 hours. But silence only fueled the fire. Protesters stood outside the mansion chanting Denise's name. Meanwhile, Denise faced the cameras with quiet strength. "I've cared for people of every race and every class. I've held their hands when they cried. I've fought for their lives. All I ask is respect. No one deserves to be treated like garbage." Literally, her words struck the nation's conscience. The nurse who had spent her life serving others now stood as a voice for justice. Finally, Jason Whitmore appeared before reporters. The billionaire, polished and careful with words, looked shaken. Cameras flashed. He stood beside Denise. His voice cracked slightly as he said, "What my mother did was wrong. There is no excuse. Racism has no place in my family, my company, or this country." The world gasped. A white billionaire openly condemning his own mother. Fury's face flashed across tabloids, unrepentant. But Jason made his choice. He sided with justice, not blood. He pledged millions toward racial equity initiatives and offered a personal apology to Denise. Denise accepted, but reminded everyone, this isn't about money. It's about change. The climax wasn't just Jason's words, it was the image of a black nurse standing tall beside a billionaire, equal in dignity. The story echoed nationwide. Talk shows debated privilege versus accountability. In classrooms, teachers asked students, what does respect really mean? Denise returned to the hospital, where strangers now thanked her for her courage. She hadn't just stood up for herself, she'd stood up for everyone who had been dismissed or degraded. Jason's reputation shifted forever. For once, people didn't talk about his technology, but about his moral stand. Investors still worried, but ordinary Americans saw a different side of wealth, choosing principle over family pride. As for Margaret, she became a living reminder of an old America many wanted to leave behind on the end. It wasn't the garbage that stuck, it was the truth Denise carried into the spotlight. A white billionaire's mother throws trash at a hardworking black nurse in her 40s. Phones record, the nation watches. But the story wasn't about humiliation. It was about response. When Jason Whitmore stood against his own mother's actions, the world realized something. Silence is never neutral. So here's the question. If justice demanded you choose between family loyalty and doing what's right, what would you do? This is white billionaire's mother throws trash on a black woman in her 40s. What happened next shook everyone. Comment your city if you're watching.